Admiral Vexthul stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the stars bend and twist as they traveled through hyperspace. His purple skin gleamed under the ship's lights, and his four eyes tracked the data flowing across the screens. The Catherian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and Vexthul had personally conquered 47 worlds in his long career. Today would be conquest number 48. Admiral, his communications officer said, her voice echoing directly in his mind through their psychic link. We are approaching the target system. The primitives call it Sol. Vexthul smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Every species they had encountered so far had fallen within days, sometimes hours. The Catherians were simply superior. They could read minds, control weaker beings with their thoughts, and their technology was thousands of years ahead of anyone else. This new species, these humans, would be no different. Show me their pathetic world, he commanded. The main screen lit up with an image of a blue and green planet, third from a yellow star. Vexthul had seen hundreds of worlds like this. The initial scans had been amusing. These humans were still using chemical rockets to barely escape their own atmosphere. They fought each other with metal projectiles and explosive devices. They had no psychic abilities at all, which made them little better than animals. Sir, we are detecting increased activity on the planet's surface, reported the scan officer. It appears they have noticed our approach. Vexthul laughed, a harsh sound that made the bridge crew flinch. Of course they have. Fear does that to primitive minds. Begin standard conquest protocol. Send the surrender demand. On Earth, Captain Dongmin stared at the massive alien ship that had appeared near Mars. It was larger than anything humans had ever built, easily 10 times the size of their biggest space station. The sleek vessel looked like it could destroy their entire fleet without breaking stride. Captain, we're receiving a transmission, his communications officer reported. The message came through in perfect Korean, then English, then Chinese, and dozens of other languages. The voice was cold and emotionless. Primitive beings of the third planet, you are now subjects of the Catherian Empire. Surrender immediately and you will be allowed to serve. Resist and you will be eliminated. You have one of your days to decide. Dongmin's hands shook, but not from fear, from anger. He had spent his entire life preparing for humanity's expansion into space, dreaming of meeting other civilizations. He had never imagined they would arrive as conquerors. Sir, what are your orders? Asked his second-in-command. Dongmin looked around the bridge at his crew. These men and women had volunteered to defend Earth, knowing they might never see home again. Behind them on the planet below were 8 billion humans who had no idea their world was about to change forever. Send a reply, Dongmin said quietly. Tell them that humanity does not surrender. Tell them that if they want our world, they will have to take it. Back on the Catherian ship, Vexthul stared at the human response in disbelief. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever refused surrender when faced with the Empire's might. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Admiral, long-range scans show the humans are mobilizing their military forces, reported the tactical officer. But sir, their weapons are primitive. Their strongest ships carry nothing but chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Vexthul nodded. Begin the attack. Show them what real power looks like. The first wave of Catherian fighters swept toward Earth like silver death. Their energy weapons could slice through the strongest human armor like paper. Their shields could deflect anything the humans might throw at them. It should have been a simple cleanup operation. Instead, something impossible happened. Dr. Hai Jin watched from the Seoul Defense Center as human forces engaged the alien fighters. The initial exchanges went exactly as expected. Human missiles exploded harmlessly against alien shields. Human laser weapons barely scratched alien armor. 3 human ships were destroyed in the first minute of fighting. But then the humans did something the aliens didn't expect. They adapted. Look at this, Jin said to her team, pointing at the tactical display. The alien weapons fire in pulses. There's a 3-second gap between shots. Our fighters are using that gap to get in close. Commander Taeho was leading a squadron of human fighters in what seemed like a suicide run. His ship stove through the alien formation, taking heavy damage but refusing to break off. At the last second, he ordered his pilots to ram the alien ships. The humans had discovered something important. While alien shields could stop energy weapons and explosives, they couldn't stop solid matter moving at high speed. 5 alien fighters were destroyed in those desperate ramming attacks. Impossible, Vexthul muttered as he watched his tactical display. No species sacrifices themselves like this. They should be begging for mercy, but the humans weren't begging. They were learning. Dr. He-Jin worked frantically in her laboratory, studying the wreckage of alien technology that Teho's sacrifice had provided. The alien systems were incredibly advanced, but they followed the same basic laws of physics that humans understood. More importantly, she could see weaknesses. The energy output fluctuates, she told the military commanders over the video link. Their shields have to reset every few seconds. If we time our attacks right, we can get through. Within hours, human forces were implementing new tactics based on He-Jin's discoveries. Instead of trying to match alien technology, they focused on exploiting alien weaknesses. Human ships began coordinating their attacks, hitting alien shields during the brief reset periods. Vexthul felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: uncertainty. His forces were still winning, but they were taking losses, real losses. Ships that should have been invincible were being destroyed by primitive human weapons. "Sir, the humans are doing something else," his tactical officer reported. "They're broadcasting our battle data to their entire planet. Every human military unit is learning from these engagements in real time. This was unprecedented. Most species kept their military secrets closely guarded, even during invasions. But humans were sharing everything instantly. When one human unit discovered a successful tactic, within minutes every human commander knew about it. The battle raged for 3 days. The Catherians had superior ships, superior weapons, and superior numbers. But the humans had something else. They had unity born of desperation and creativity born of necessity. On the third day, something happened that shocked the entire Catherian fleet. A group of human ships led by Captain Dongmin himself managed to disable and capture a Catherian destroyer. It was the first time in Catherian history that their technology had been captured by a primitive species. Vexthul stared at the empty space where his destroyer had been. The humans had used their ramming tactics not to destroy the ship, but to disable its engines and weapons. Then they had somehow breached the hull and captured the crew. "Admiral," his second-in-command said carefully, "perhaps we should call for reinforcements." Vexthul's pride rebelled against the suggestion. He was Admiral Vexthul, conqueror of 47 worlds. He didn't need help to defeat a single primitive planet. "No," he said firmly, "we will crush them ourselves." But deep down, for the first time in his long career, Vexthul wondered if he was making a mistake. These humans were unlike anything the Empire had encountered. They didn't fight for territory or resources. They seemed to fight for something else entirely, something the Catherians didn't understand. As the first week of the invasion ended, both sides settled into defensive positions. The Catherians controlled the space around Earth, but they hadn't been able to land a single soldier on the planet's surface. The humans had lost half their space fleet. But they had also proven something important. They could fight back. In the quiet moments between battles, Vexthul found himself thinking about the human response to their surrender demand. Most species begged or tried to negotiate. The humans had simply said no. Not, "We cannot surrender," or "We need time to consider." Just no. It was a simple word, but it carried a weight that the Catherian Empire had never encountered before. For 3,000 years, they had been the undisputed masters of the galaxy. No one had ever simply told them no, but these humans had. And somehow, impossibly, they were making it stick. War Commander Zekthar arrived at the Sol system with the largest fleet the Catherian Empire had assembled in 500 years. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. His orders were simple: blockade the human system until they surrendered from starvation. Zekthar had never lost a campaign in his 2,000-year career. He had broken the will of entire civilizations without firing a shot. Blockades were his specialty. Cut off their supply lines, watch their unity crumble, then accept their surrender. It always worked. "Deploy the fleet in standard siege formation," he commanded his officers. "Nothing gets in or out of this system. Not even a single escape pod." The Catherian ships spread out across the solar system like a vast net. They positioned themselves at every jump point, every possible route in or out of the system. Advanced sensors tracked every human ship, every space station, every piece of debris larger than a grain of sand. Within days, the blockade was perfect. Earth was completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Zekthar settled back to wait. In his experience, Most species lasted about 6 months before hunger and despair broke their resistance. The humans had enough food and resources to last perhaps a year if they rationed carefully. He gave them 8 months before they came begging. He was wrong. On Earth, engineer Jay-Wook stared at the holographic display showing the alien blockade. Every exit from the solar system was blocked. Any human ship that tried to leave was immediately destroyed. They were trapped, cut off from any hope of outside help. But instead of despair, Jay-Wook felt excitement. "Look at this pattern," he said to his team. "The aliens are using a standard military formation. They're trying to cover maximum space with minimum ships. That means there are gaps." Dr. Haye Jin, who had become the Earth's leading expert on alien technology, leaned over his shoulder. "Gaps we can exploit? Maybe. But first we need better ships." Jay-Wook pulled up another display showing Earth's industrial capacity. "We need to completely redesign our approach to space travel." What happened next would have been impossible for any other species. Within weeks, Earth's entire industrial base was converting to war production. Car factories started building spaceship engines. Electronics companies began manufacturing weapon systems. Mining operations on the moon and asteroids expanded at an incredible rate. But the most impressive change was in the humans themselves. Pilot So Young had been a commercial transport pilot before the invasion. She had flown cargo runs between Earth and the outer colonies. A boring but stable job. Now she found herself leading the most dangerous missions in human history. "The alien patrol pattern repeats every 6 hours," she briefed her squadron. "There's a 15-minute window where the sensors overlap, but don't quite cover this section of space. If we can get through there, we can reach the asteroid belt undetected." Her plan was insane. The gap she was talking about was barely large enough for a single small ship, and it only existed for a few minutes at a time. Worse, they would have to fly without engines or communications to avoid detection. "Ma'am," one of her pilots said nervously, "even if we make it to the asteroids, how do we get back?" So Young smiled grimly. "We don't come back. We stay out there and build." The mission launched 3 days later. So Young led 12 small ships through the blockade, using the captured alien stealth technology that Dr. Haye Jin had reverse-engineered. They drifted through space like dead metal, hoping the alien sensors would mistake them for debris. It worked. War Commander Zekthar was reviewing routine patrol reports when his intelligence officer approached with a puzzled expression. "Sir, we're detecting unusual activity in the asteroid belt. Increased mining operations, construction signatures, energy readings that don't match anything in our database of human technology." Zekthar frowned. "Impossible. We destroyed all human operations in the outer system. There's nothing out there but rocks." "Yes, sir, but the readings are definite. The humans are building something." For the first time since arriving at Earth, Zekthar felt a flicker of concern. How had the humans reached the asteroid belt? His blockade was perfect. Nothing could get through without his sensors detecting it. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. So Young and her team had been working in the asteroid belt for 2 months, using raw materials and captured alien technology to build something the galaxy had never seen before. They called it a ghost factory, a mobile construction facility that could hide among the asteroids and produce ships using stealth technology. The beauty of it, Jay-Wook explained to Earth Command through an encrypted quantum link, is that the aliens can't find something that looks exactly like a rock, but build starships inside. The ghost factory was producing ships unlike anything humans had built before. They combined human engineering with alien technology in ways that neither species had imagined. The hulls were made from asteroid metal but reinforced with alien armor composites. The weapons were human designs but powered by alien energy systems. Most importantly, these new ships could fight. The first test came when a Catherian patrol discovered one of the construction sites. 3 alien ships moved in to investigate what they thought was unusual asteroid activity. Instead, they found a squadron of new human ships waiting for them. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, all 3 alien ships were destroyed, and the humans had captured their technology intact. Zekthar stared at the battle reports in disbelief. His ships had been outfought by vessels that shouldn't exist, using technology that the humans shouldn't possess. Worse, the human ships had vanished back into the asteroid field before his reinforcements could arrive. "Sir," his tactical officer said carefully, "the humans appear to have developed some kind of mobile production capability. They're building ships faster than we can destroy them." This was impossible. The humans were trapped, blockaded, cut off from all resources. How were they not only surviving but growing stronger? The answer came a week later when human ships launched their first attack on the blockade itself. Commander Tejo, who had survived his ramming attack in the first battle, now led a squadron of the new ghost ships. His target was one of the Cytherian command vessels, a massive ship that coordinated an entire section of the blockade. "Remember," he told his pilots, "we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to capture them." The human attack came from 6 directions at once, using tactics that the Cytherians had never encountered. Instead of trying to punch through the alien defenses, the humans used hit-and-run attacks to disable specific systems. They targeted engines, not weapons, communications, not armor. Within an hour, they had captured their first Cytherian command ship. Zekthar felt his confidence cracking as he watched the humans dissect his technology in real time. Every system they captured, every piece of equipment they studied made them stronger. They were learning faster than he could adapt. But the worst part was what the humans did with their prisoners. Instead of executing the captured Cytherian crew, the humans tried to communicate with them. Dr. Heejin had learned enough of the alien language to ask questions, and what she discovered shocked both species. "Most of your Empire's soldiers don't want to be here," she told the captured Cytherian officers. "They're fighting because they're afraid of what happens if they refuse." This was information that the Cytherian High Command worked very hard to keep secret. The Empire wasn't held together by loyalty or shared purpose. It was held together by fear. The humans began broadcasting this information to every Cytherian ship in the system. "We know you don't want to fight," the message said in careful Cytherian. "We know you're afraid of your own commanders. We're offering you a choice. Help us end this war, and we'll help you find freedom." Zekthar was horrified to discover that some of his own crew were listening to these broadcasts. Worse, some were beginning to believe them. "Sir," his second-in-command reported quietly, "we're detecting increased communication traffic between our ships. The crew are talking to each other about the human offer. This was mutiny, or close to it. In 3,000 years of Cytherian history, no subject species had ever tried to turn the Empire's own soldiers against their commanders. Zekthar decided to end this quickly. He ordered a massive assault on Earth itself, using every ship in his fleet. If he couldn't break the humans' will through blockade, he would break it through overwhelming force. It was exactly what the humans had been hoping for. As the Cytherian fleet moved toward Earth, they left the blockade positions unmanned for the first time in months. Human ships hidden throughout the solar system suddenly activated, launching a coordinated attack on the alien supply lines. So Young led the assault on the main Cytherian supply depot, a massive station that fed the entire blockade fleet. Using their new ships and captured alien technology, the humans didn't just attack the station. They captured it. "War Commander," came the panicked report, "the humans have taken our primary supply base. They're using our own logistics network against us." Zekthar watched his perfectly planned siege collapse in a matter of hours. Without supplies, his fleet couldn't maintain the blockade. Without the blockade, the humans could reach the rest of the galaxy. For the first time in his long career, Zekthar had been outfought by a supposedly primitive species. But the humans weren't finished. As Cytherian ships scrambled, High Strategist Mordeth had spent 800 years studying warfare across the galaxy. She understood every tactic, every strategy, every way that civilizations could be conquered and controlled. She had written the manual that every Cytherian commander used. But as she studied the reports from the Sol system, she realized she was looking at something completely new. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered," she told the emergency session of the High Command. Her voice carried through the psychic network that connected all senior Cytherians. But for the first time in centuries, that network felt uncertain. "Explain," demanded the Supreme Commander, his mental voice sharp with irritation. The loss of the Sol blockade had been embarrassing. The capture of Cytherian ships and technology was a disaster, but surely these primitives couldn't threaten the Empire itself. Mordeth activated the holographic display, showing the pattern of human attacks over the past months. "Look at this. Every other species we've fought has tried to protect their homeworld first. They fight defensively, trying to preserve what they have. But humans, they went on the attack immediately." The display showed human ships striking deep into Cytherian territory, hitting supply bases, communication relays, and isolated colonies. But these weren't random raids. There was a pattern, a strategy that Mordeth was only beginning to understand. "They're not trying to hold territory," she continued. "They're trying to spread information. Every colony they hit, they broadcast the same message. The Empire can be defeated. They're proving it by defeating us." Intelligence operative Kyung-Soo crouched in the maintenance tunnels of Catherian Station Beta 7, listening to the alien guards discuss the recent human attacks. His translation implant, built from captured Catherian technology, let him understand their conversation perfectly. "Third supply convoy hit this week," one guard was saying. "Command says it's just random raids, but my cousin was stationed at Gamma 12 when the humans hit it. He said they didn't just attack, they liberated the slave workers." "Impossible," the other guard replied, but his voice carried doubt. "Slaves can't revolt. The mind control implants prevent it." "That's what I thought too. But apparently the humans have some kind of device that disrupts the implants. They're freeing slaves across 3 sectors. Kyung-Soo smiled grimly and activated his recording device. This intelligence would be transmitted back to Earth within the hour, along with detailed scans of the station's defenses and cargo manifests. The human strategy was working exactly as planned. They weren't trying to conquer the Catherian Empire through military force. They were trying to inspire it to collapse from within. Dr. Yujin worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the captured Catherian command ship, now converted into humanity's first deep space research vessel. The alien faster-than-light drive was incredibly complex, but she was beginning to understand how it worked. "The key is the quantum field manipulation," she explained to her team through the secure communication link. "The Catherians use psychic energy to navigate hyperspace, but we can do the same thing with computer calculations." Her breakthrough was revolutionary. Not only could humans now travel faster than light without psychic abilities, but their version was actually more efficient than the Catherian design. Human ships could travel farther faster, and more accurately than their alien counterparts. "Ma'am," her assistant said excitedly, "if we implement this across the fleet, we could have ships anywhere in the galaxy within days instead of weeks." Yujin nodded. Already thinking about the implications, the Catherians ruled the galaxy because they could move their forces quickly to suppress any rebellion. But if humans could move even faster, send the specifications to all human shipyards immediately, she ordered, and prepare a special package for our friends in the Resistance. General Chang Ho stood on the bridge of humanity's newest warship, watching 12 star systems prepare for simultaneous liberation. The ship itself was a marvel of human-alien hybrid technology, faster and more powerful than anything either species had built alone. "General, all task forces report ready," his communications officer announced. "Operation Free Galaxy is go." Chang Ho had spent months planning this moment. Instead of attacking one system at a time, human forces would hit 12 Catherian strongholds simultaneously. The aliens couldn't be everywhere at once, and this would prove it to every enslaved species in the galaxy. "Execute," he ordered. Across 3 sectors of space, human ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect coordination. But they weren't alone. Each fleet included ships crewed by former Catherian slaves, species that had been conquered generations ago but had never forgotten their desire for freedom. The Zephyrian bird people provided incredible pilots. The crystalline Methodians offered living computers that could outcalculate any Catherian AI. The aquatic pelagics brought weapons technology that worked underwater and in the vacuum of space. Together, they were unstoppable. High Strategist Mordeth watched the reports flood in as 12 systems fell to the human alliance in a single day. What terrified her wasn't the military defeat. The Empire had lost battles before. What terrified her was how quickly the humans were adapting and improving. "They're sharing everything," she reported to the High Command. "Every tactical innovation, every technological breakthrough, every successful strategy. When one human commander develops a new technique, within hours every human force in the galaxy knows about it." This was impossible according to everything the Catherians knew about warfare. Military secrets were supposed to be closely guarded. Species were supposed to compete with each other, not cooperate. But humans seemed to operate on completely different principles. "Worse," Mordeth continued, "they're teaching these techniques to every species they liberate. We're not just fighting humans anymore. We're fighting an alliance that grows stronger with every victory." The Supreme Commander's mental voice carried the first hint of worry Mordeth had ever detected from him. What do you recommend? Mordeth had been dreading this question, because her answer would shock the entire command structure. We need to use the psychic weapon. The psychic weapon was the Empire's most closely guarded secret. It was a device that could project terror, despair, and hopelessness directly into the minds of entire populations. It had been used only 3 times in Catherian history, and each time it had broken the will to resist of entire civilizations. Deploy it against their homeworld, Mordeth said. Break the human spirit at its source and their alliance will crumble. The weapon was massive, requiring an entire fleet to transport and operate. It took weeks to move into position near the Sol system, but Mordeth was confident it would end the war quickly. No species could resist the concentrated psychic assault of the Empire's greatest weapon. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Captain Dongmin felt the psychic attack begin as a whisper at the edge of his consciousness, a voice telling him that resistance was hopeless, that humanity should surrender and accept their place as slaves. The feeling grew stronger, pressing against his mind like a weight, but it couldn't find purchase. Humans, having evolved without psychic abilities, had natural defenses that even they didn't fully understand. The alien mental attack slid off human minds like water off stone. More importantly, human communication networks were electronic, not psychic. The weapon that should have paralyzed human command and control did absolutely nothing to their ability to coordinate. All ships, this is Earth Command. Dongmin broadcast to the human fleet. We are under psychic attack. Maintain radio silence and switch to laser communication only. Execute Counter-Strike Alpha. The humans had been preparing for this possibility ever since they learned about Catherian psychic abilities. While the alien weapon tried to break human spirits, human ships launched a coordinated assault on the weapon platform itself. The battle was brief and decisive. The Catherian psychic weapon, so effective against other species, was useless against humans. Worse, the massive platform was too large and slow to defend itself against the swift human attack ships. When the weapon platform exploded, the psychic shockwave could be felt across 3 star systems, but instead of weakening the human alliance, it strengthened it. Every enslaved species in the region felt the moment when the Empire's greatest weapon was destroyed. For the first time in generations, they felt hope. Rebellions began breaking out everywhere. Mordeth stared at the reports in growing horror. The psychic weapon's destruction had been like a signal beacon, telling every oppressed population in the galaxy that the Empire could be beaten. Slave revolts were erupting on dozens of worlds. Entire sectors were declaring independence. The humans have done something impossible, she reported to the increasingly panicked High Command. They've turned our greatest strength against us. Every time we use our psychic abilities, it just proves to other species that they need to resist us. The Supreme Commander's mental voice was filled with rage and fear. How is this possible? We have ruled for 3,000 years. We are superior to these primitives in every way. But Mordeth was beginning to understand the truth. The Catherians weren't superior. They had just been unchallenged for so long that they had forgotten how to adapt. They had built the Empress Veltara stood in the crystal throne room that had been the seat of Catherian power for 3,000 years. The walls were made from living crystal that responded to psychic energy, normally glowing with the confidence and authority of the Empire's rulers. Today they flickered with uncertainty and fear. Show me the latest reports, she commanded, her mental voice carrying across the psychic network to her advisors. The holographic display that materialized before her showed a galaxy in chaos. Red symbols marked systems in open revolt. Yellow indicated areas where Catherian control was slipping. Green showed regions still loyal to the Empire. There was very little green left. Majesty, High Strategist Mordeth said carefully. We have lost contact with 67 sectors in the past month alone. The human alliance now controls nearly a third of our territory. Veltara felt her composure cracking. She was the 14th Empress of the Catherian line, inheritor of the greatest empire in galactic history. Her ancestors had conquered thousands of worlds, enslaved hundreds of species, and created a civilization that was supposed to last forever. How had it all gone so wrong? It's not just the territory we're losing, continued Mordeth. It's how we're losing it. The humans aren't ruling these worlds like conquerors. They're liberating them. Ambassador Dayun stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, looking out at faces from dozens of different species. Some breathed oxygen like humans, others required methane or ammonia. Some had evolved from predators, others from prey animals, but all of them shared one thing. They had lived under Catherian rule, and they wanted freedom. My friends, Dayun said. Her words translated instantly into 47 different languages. We are not here to replace one empire with another. We are here to ensure that no species will ever again have to bow to masters they did not choose. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Tentacles waved, antennae quivered, and voices in a dozen different pitches rose in approval. Dayun had learned that while species across the galaxy were different in many ways, the desire for freedom was universal. The Catherian Empire claims that some species are born to rule and others are born to serve, she continued. We reject this completely. We believe that every sentient being has the right to determine their own destiny. In the audience, a representative of the crystalline Methodians flashed patterns of light that translated as a question. What of those Catherians who wish to surrender? Will they be treated as we were treated under their rule? Dayun smiled. This was the question she had been hoping for. We are better than our former oppressors. Any Catherian who lays down their weapons and renounces conquest will be welcomed as an equal member of our alliance. The reaction was electric. Species that had been enslaved for generations were being offered the chance to forgive their former masters. It was a concept so alien to the Catherian way of thinking that many Empire commanders couldn't even comprehend it. Captain Seung-min led the Liberation Fleet toward the Catherian colony of Nexus Prime, a world that had been the administrative center for 12 subject systems. Intelligence reports suggested that the planet's governor was preparing to surrender, but Seung-min wasn't taking any chances. All ships, maintain defensive formation, he ordered. Remember, our primary mission is to free the enslaved populations. Destroying Catherian military forces is secondary. This approach had proven devastatingly effective across dozens of worlds. Instead of trying to conquer planets through bombardment and invasion, human forces offered the local populations a choice: join the liberation or continue living under Catherian rule. The choice was surprisingly easy for most species to make. As the human fleet approached Nexus Prime, they were met by an unexpected sight. Catherian ships were fleeing the planet, but they weren't preparing for battle. They were evacuating. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's not from the Catherian governor. It's from the resistance. The message came through in multiple languages, broadcast by the enslaved species that had been working in the planet's mines and factories. Human ships, we have taken control of the capital city. The Catherian administrators have fled. We are free. Seung-min felt a mix of pride and amazement. The human fleet hadn't even arrived yet, and the planet had liberated itself. Word of successful rebellions was spreading faster than any military force could move. All ships change course to peaceful orbit, he ordered. Prepare humanitarian aid packages instead of weapons. It looks like our job here is already done. Back on Kither Prime, Empress Veltara was receiving similar reports from across her shrinking empire. Planets were declaring independence before human forces even arrived. Catherian administrators were fleeing their posts rather than face rebellious populations. Entire sectors were simply leaving. How is this possible? She demanded of her advisors. We are the superior species. We have the strongest minds, the most advanced technology, the greatest military in the galaxy. High Strategist Mordeth had been thinking about this question for months. The answer when it came to her was both simple and terrifying. Majesty, she said carefully, perhaps we were never actually superior. Perhaps we were just unopposed. The silence that followed was deafening. The crystal walls of the throne room flickered with confused patterns of light as the Empress tried to process this impossible concept. We built our empire by convincing other species that resistance was hopeless, Mordeth continued. But the humans have proven that resistance is possible. Once that belief spreads, our actual military advantages become irrelevant. Veltara stood abruptly, her mind racing. Then we destroy them. We use every ship, every weapon, every resource of the Empire to crush these humans before their ideas spread further. But even as she spoke, she knew it was too late. The ideas had already spread. The galaxy was already changing. Commander Bora coordinated the largest military operation in galactic history from her flagship, a massive vessel that had been built from the combined technologies of 30 different species. Around her, the bridge crew included humans, former Cytherian slaves, and even a few Cytherians who had defected to the Alliance. "Ma'am, we have confirmation," her intelligence officer reported. "The Cytherian Empire has recalled all military forces to defend their core systems. They're abandoning the outer colonies entirely." This was exactly what the Alliance had been hoping for. Instead of fighting the Empire across thousands of battlefields, they could force a decisive confrontation at the Cytherian homeworld itself. "Signal all fleet commanders," Bora ordered. "Execute Operation Final Freedom. All ships converge on Kither Prime." But this wouldn't be a typical military assault. The Alliance had learned from human tactics and adapted them to their own needs. Instead of trying to destroy the Cytherian homeworld, they planned to liberate it. The fleet that approached Kither Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 47 different species, all working together with perfect coordination. Human vessels flew alongside crystalline Methodian bioships. Aquatic pelagic craft operated in formation with atmospheric Zephyrian fighters. They were all united by a single purpose: ending the age of empires forever. As news of the approaching fleet reached Kither Prime, something unprecedented happened. Cytherian civilians began protesting in the streets. For 3,000 years, they had been told that their empire was just and necessary, that other species needed Cytherian guidance to survive. But reports from the liberated territories told a different story. Species that had been guided by the Empire were thriving on their own. Worlds that had been strip-mined for Cytherian benefit were healing under their original inhabitants' care. Slave species were building amazing societies when given the chance. For the first time in their history, ordinary Cytherians began to question whether their empire was actually a good thing. "Citizens of Kither Prime," came the broadcast from the approaching Alliance fleet. Transmitted in perfect Cytherian, "We are not here to conquer you. We are here to offer you the same choice we have offered every other species in the galaxy: freedom." The message was simple but revolutionary. Join the Galactic Liberation Alliance as equals. Help build a new civilization based on cooperation instead of domination, and work together to heal the damage that 3 millennia of empire had caused, or face the consequences of continuing to support a system based on oppression and fear. Empress Veltara felt her empire crumbling around her as reports flooded in of Cytherian cities declaring neutrality, Cytherian military units refusing orders, and Cytherian citizens demanding an end to the war. "Majesty," Mordeth said quietly, "perhaps it is time to consider negotiation." Veltara's first instinct was to refuse. Empresses of Kither did not negotiate with lesser species, but as she looked at the tactical display showing Alliance forces surrounding her homeworld, she realized she might not have a choice. What would they want?" she asked. Mordeth activated a recorded message that had been broadcast to every Cytherian world. Ambassador Daun's face appeared, speaking directly to the camera with calm authority. "To the rulers of the Cytherian Empire," the message began, "we offer you one final chance for peace. Dissolve your empire voluntarily, release all enslaved species, allow free elections on every world. Y Fleet Admiral Kexthys had commanded the Imperial Navy for 400 years, leading the Empire's forces through dozens of successful campaigns. But as he stared at the tactical display showing the approaching Alliance fleet, he knew this would be unlike any battle he had ever fought. "Sir, enemy forces are now within long-range sensor range," his tactical officer reported. "Fleet composition is unprecedented." Kexthys studied the data with growing unease. The Alliance fleet included ships from species he had never seen working together. Former enemies were flying in perfect formation, united by their hatred of Cytherian rule. More disturbing were the ships that registered as Cytherian designs, but were broadcasting Alliance identification codes. "How many of our own vessels have defected?" he asked quietly. 47 confirmed, sir. Possibly more. The humans seem to have convinced them that joining the Alliance is preferable to dying for the Empire. Kexthys felt something he had never experienced in 4 centuries of military service: doubt. "How did you fight an enemy that converted your own forces instead of destroying them?" Admiral Inho stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, coordinating the largest fleet in galactic history. Ships stretched across space for millions of kilometers, representing the combined military might of every species that had ever been oppressed by the Catherian Empire. But despite the overwhelming numbers, Inho knew this battle would be decided by strategy, not strength. All fleet commanders, "This is Admiral Inho," he broadcast on the secure Alliance frequency. "Remember, our primary objective is not destruction. We are here to liberate, not to conquer." The strategy was radical and had been controversial even among Alliance leaders. Instead of trying to destroy the Catherian fleet, they planned to capture it. Instead of bombarding the homeworld into submission, they wanted to convince it to surrender. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Catherian fleet. They're requesting parley." Inho nodded. "Put it through." Fleet Admiral Kexithis appeared on the main screen, his four eyes showing the strain of commanding a hopeless defense. "Admiral Inho, I am authorized to negotiate the terms of our surrender." The human admiral felt a mix of surprise and respect. "I appreciate your directness, Admiral, but I'm not authorized to accept surrender from military forces alone. This decision must come from your entire civilization. The Empress has agreed to address your demands," Kexithis replied, "but she wishes to understand what kind of government you plan to establish if the Empire falls." Inho smiled. "We don't plan to establish any government over Catherian space, Admiral. We plan to help your people establish their own." The concept was so alien to Catherian thinking that Kexithis needed several moments to process it. "You would allow us to rule ourselves?" "Not rule," Inho corrected, "govern. Through free elections and democratic representation, the same system we're helping establish on every liberated world." Psychologist Min Jung had spent months studying captured Catherian prisoners, trying to understand how an entire species could support a system based on oppression and conquest. Her research had led to a breakthrough that would change the course of the war. "The key insight," she explained to the Alliance leadership, "is that most Catherians aren't actually evil. They're afraid. They've been taught that if they don't control other species, those species will eventually destroy them." Ambassador Dayun leaned forward with interest. "So their aggression is actually defensive?" "Exactly. The Empire's propaganda has convinced them that they're surrounded by enemies who would exterminate them if given the chance. They see conquest as survival. This understanding had led to a revolutionary new approach. Instead of treating the Catherians as irredeemable enemies, the Alliance began offering them something they had never experienced: security without domination. "If we can prove that they can be safe without controlling others," Min Jung continued, "many of them will choose peace." Engineer Wu Jin worked frantically in his mobile laboratory aboard one of the captured Catherian ships, developing technology that seemed impossible even by Alliance standards. His breakthrough would make the final battle unnecessary. "The Catherian psychic network depends on fear and hierarchy," he explained to his team. "Their minds are literally connected through shared emotions of superiority and control. But if we can disrupt that connection temporarily..." His device was elegantly simple. Instead of trying to destroy the Catherian psychic network, it would flood it with new emotions: hope, curiosity, and the possibility of change. For just a few minutes, every Catherian in the system would experience what it felt like to imagine a different way of living. "Sir, are you sure this will work?" his assistant asked nervously. "We're essentially trying to change the mindset of an entire species." Wu Jin checked his calculations one more time. "It's not about changing them permanently. It's about giving them a moment to choose who they want to be." The final confrontation began not with weapons fire, but with a broadcast. Empress Veltara appeared on every screen in the Catherian system, her image transmitted by both Imperial and Alliance communication networks. Her people had never seen her look so uncertain, so human. "Citizens of the Empire," she began, her psychic voice carrying undertones of fear and hope in equal measure. "For 3,000 years, our civilization has been built on the belief that we must control others to protect ourselves. Today, I ask you to consider whether that belief is still true." The response was immediate and chaotic. Across Kither Prime and throughout the system, Catherians began debating in the streets, in their homes, and through their psychic links. The idea that their empire might be wrong was so radical that it sparked the greatest philosophical crisis in their history. Fleet Admiral Kexthus watched his fleet's morale collapse in real time as individual ships began questioning their orders. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the crew is asking whether we should continue fighting for an empire that the Empress herself seems to doubt." This was the moment Wu Jin had been waiting for. "Activate the empathy broadcast," he ordered. The device hidden aboard the captured Catherian ships began transmitting on psychic frequencies, flooding the local network with emotions that most Catherians had never experienced. What it felt like to be free, to choose your own path, to cooperate instead of dominate. For the first time in their species' history, the Catherians experienced empathy on a massive scale. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Across the Imperial fleet, ship after ship powered down their weapons and requested permission to surrender. On the surface of Kither Prime, massive crowds gathered to demand an end to the war, but the most significant moment came when Empress Veltara herself stepped down from her crystal throne and walked outside the palace to address her people directly. "My people," she said, her voice carrying across the planet through both electronic and psychic networks, "I have made a decision that will change our civilization forever. The Catherian Empire ends today." The silence that followed was absolute. 3,000 years of history had just ended with a single sentence. "But the Catherian people do not end," she continued. "We will join the Galactic Alliance as equals, and we will help build a galaxy where no species rules over another." Admiral Inho watched the surrender proceedings from his flagship, feeling a mix of triumph and sadness. The war was over, but he knew the hard work was just beginning. Dismantling a 3,000-year-old empire and helping its people learn to live in freedom would take generations. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from Catherian forces throughout the galaxy. The word is spreading faster than our ships can travel." "And the liberated species?" Inho asked. "Celebrations on every Alliance world, but also requests for help. Many of the newly free species want assistance establishing their own governments." Inho nodded. This was what they had planned for, what they had hoped for. The Alliance wouldn't rule the galaxy. It would help the galaxy rule itself. Fleet Admiral Kexthus stood on the bridge of his flagship as Alliance representatives came aboard to formally accept his surrender. But instead of the humiliation he had expected, he found something else. "Respect, Admiral," said the human officer leading the boarding party. "Your reputation as a tactical genius is well known throughout the Alliance. We hope you'll consider joining our military academy as an instructor." Kexthus stared at the human in shock. "You want me to teach your officers how to fight?" "We want you to teach them how to think," the human replied. "Your strategic insights could help us build a better defense force for the new galactic community." For the first time in centuries, Kexthus felt something he thought he had forgotten: hope for the future. The transformation of Kither Prime happened faster than anyone had thought possible. Within weeks, the Crystal Palace was converted into a center for democratic education. Former Imperial administrators worked alongside Alliance advisors to establish voting systems and civil rights protections. Ambassador Daon walked through the streets of the Catherian capital, amazed at how quickly the city was changing. Where once there had been monuments to conquest, there were now parks and schools.